My name is Stephen Fegge, and I am the lay leader today. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills. Whether you have been with us, this church for many years, or this is your first time visiting, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. We begin our service by acknowledging that the land we stand on was taken from the local indigenous people. Inspired by their culture, may we strive to become better stewards of the earth. We have a few announcements this morning. First of all, we have a message from the Capital Campaign team. Please take a look at the watercolor of the church painted by our very own Al Cipher. He has donated it to the Capital Campaign. It will be raffled off December 4th. You may obtain a ticket by turning in your pledge. After you have completed your pledge, you can purchase additional tickets, $5 each, from Mary Ellen Johnson. From the Leadership Development Team. As we emerge from two and more years of isolation, it is time to re-engage. Many of our committees and teams are in need of new members, and participating is a great way to build relationships while supporting our community. On November 13th, immediately after the service, the Leadership Development Team is hosting a committee fair. Learn more about our committees and teams, how they support UUCNH, and how you can get involved. Also, please join us next Saturday at First Unitarian Church or online for this year's cluster assembly. Information concerning this is in the e-news. And again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills. It is good to be together in person or virtually.
Grant us the ability to find joy and strength, not in the strident call to arms, but in stretching out our arms to grasp our fellow creatures in the striving for truth and justice. Please rise in body or spirit to sing our opening hymn, number 347, Gather the Spirit. children to come forward for today's story. All right. Those children get cuter and cuter, don't they?
But can they get back up?
The story's called Pierre, a cautionary tale in 5 chapters and a prologue by Maurice Sendak. Prologue. There once was a boy named Pierre who only would say, "I don't care." Read his story, my friend, for you'll find at the end that a suitable moral lies there. One day, his mother said when Pierre climbed out of bed, "Good morning, darling boy. You are my only joy." Pierre said, "I don't care." "What would you like to eat?" "I don't care." "Some lovely cream of wheat?" "I don't care." "Don't sit backwards on your chair." "I don't care." "Or pour syrup in your hair." "I don't care." "You are acting like a clown." "I don't care." "And we have to go to town." "I don't care." "Don't you want to come, my dear?" "I don't care." "Would you rather stay right here?" "I don't care." So his mother left him there. Chapter 2. His father said, "Get off your head or I will march you up to bed." Pierre said, "I don't care." "I would think that you could see your head is where your feet should be." "I don't care." "If you keep standing upside down," "I don't care." "We will never get to town." "I don't care." "If only you would say I care." "I don't care." "I'd let you fold the folding chair." "I don't care." So his parents left him there. They didn't take him anywhere. Chapter 3. Now as the night began to fall, a hungry lion paid a call. He looked Pierre right in the eye and asked him if he liked to die. Pierre said, "I don't care." "I can eat you, don't you see?" "I don't care." "And you will be inside of me." "I don't care." "Then you'll never have to bother." "I don't care." "With a mother and a father." "I don't care." "Is that all you have to say?" "I don't care." "Then I'll eat you if I may." "I don't care." So the lion ate Pierre. Chapter 4. Arriving home at 6 o'clock, his parents had a dreadful shock. They found the lion sick in bed and cried, "Pierre is surely dead." They pulled the lion by the hair. They hit him with the folding chair. His mother asked, "Where is Pierre?" The lion answered, "I don't care." His father said, "Pierre's in there." Chapter 5. They rushed the lion into town. The doctor shook him up and down, and when the lion gave a roar, Pierre fell out upon the floor. He rubbed his eyes and scratched his head and laughed because he wasn't dead. His mother cried and held him tight. His father asked, "Are you all right?" Pierre said, "I am feeling fine. Please take me home. It's 9:30. "If you would care to climb on me, I'll take you there." Oh, the lion said, "If you would care to climb on me, I'll take you there." Then everyone looked at Pierre, who shouted, "Yes, indeed, I care." The lion took them home to rest and stayed on as a weekend guest. The moral of Pierre is care. And now you may go to your classes.
Good morning. I'm Ruth Horwitz from the Lay Pastoral Care Team. During our service, we create this sacred space for sharing within our community. It is a time to share significant life passages with the congregation so that you can be held in loving care. I'll be reading the joys and sorrows this morning, and Susan Powers will be placing a stone representing each joy or sorrow in the sand. The sand represents our congregation supporting our sorrows and lifting up our joys. Today we have a sorrow from Diana Hall. My 94-year-old mother passed on October 30th, surrounded by her children. It was a peaceful passing, and it was something she desired. To Diana, we say, we're holding you in our hearts. And a joy from the Green Sanctuary team. A couple years back, we submitted an application for Green Sanctuary accreditation. In early 2021, we received our official acceptance as a Green Sanctuary candidate. We had done excellent work greening our church with solar panels and the audit and upgrades, and were well on our way. The remaining step to full accreditation was to bring expertise and labor to those in need in the community. Our team, other church volunteers, and church youth now have 4 efforts underway supporting community needs. Our joy is we got our application update submitted just in the nick of time. Special thanks to Becca Hovermail for pulling together the write-ups on those projects in short order. Full Green Sanctuary accreditation is almost in our grasp. Look for the project details in upcoming e-news articles. So to the Green Sanctuary team, we say, we share in your joy. We now place one more stone in the sand for all the joys and sorrows that exist in our hearts but remain unspoken today. We especially think of our church community as we move through this transition period to our future. Please know that the Lay Pastoral Care Team is here for you to listen and support you. You can always reach us collectively via the Breeze Forum or by our email, lpct@uucnh.org, or individually as you choose. From far and near, please say with me our caring words. Let us hold in our circle of caring each person here. Let us hold in our hearts those who are unable to be with us today. Let us hold in our memories those who have moved on. Let us find comfort in knowing that we are not alone.
I now invite you to join together in a spirit of silent meditation. At this time, we will take an offering to support the work of our church. Our Share the Plate recipient for November is the National Network of Abortion Funds, which works to remove financial and logistical barriers to abortion access. You may donate by November 30th by placing cash or check in the blue envelope on the offering table, or checks should be made payable to UCNH with Share the Plate or NNAF in the memo line. We will now take the offering through the baskets that will be passed. You may also make an offering on our website. The instructions to do so are on our website. Thank you. Please join me in saying the dedication of the offering. The words will be on the screen. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. Our first reading for this morning is from the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Our second reading is an excerpt from Thomas Jefferson's letter of 1802 to the Danbury Baptists. I contemplate with solemn reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state.
I ain't afraid of your
Well, good morning. I'm Mary Doubleday, and you probably never see me like this. You always see me. Illegal use of drums. In fact, when we went through the long lockdown period and I grew out my white hair, I came back and some people didn't recognize me. Because all they ever see is the back of my head. But I feel very hip now because apparently I am part Tregarian. From its very earliest days, the United States has wrestled with the problem we call church and state. Governments create laws to regulate society, to keep citizens safe, and to maintain order. The churches also try to regulate society and enforce laws they believe were handed down by God. And different religions have different gods and different laws. So what happens when a society does not share one faith? This is the puzzle the founders of the United States tried to solve with the separation of church and state. For hundreds of years, the Catholic Church had controlled most of Europe. But the invention of the printing press, the Reformation, the desire of Henry VIII for a younger wife, all of these contributed to the end of Catholic control of Europe, and the 1600s and 1700s were driven by sectarianism, and this religious strife carried over into the new American colonies. We think of the Pilgrims arriving on Plymouth Rock in search of religious freedom. Actually, they arrived ready to build a colony where they could enforce their own version of Christianity rather than living with the Anglican version of Christianity. Thank you. Roger Williams was exiled by the Puritans for, among other sins, arguing that the natives were people and deserved respect. He started the new colony of Rhode Island. He was soon joined by Anne Hutchinson, who had dared to invite women to her house to discuss religion. Women were not allowed to have ideas about religion. Pennsylvania, founded by the Quaker William Penn, actually did promote religious freedom. While Penn sold the first land to rich London Quakers, he soon attracted other persecuted minorities, including Huguenots, Mennonites, Amish, Catholics, Lutherans, and Jews. Virginia, on the other hand, was an Anglican colony. Thus, our early Virginia-born presidents, Washington, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, are often labeled as Anglicans or Episcopalians, but that label has nothing to do with their actual beliefs, only the society they were born into. So, from the 1607 British invasion until the 1789 inauguration of George Washington, 182 years passed. With many waves of immigrants with different beliefs, different forms of government, and many forms of religious persecution within the 13 colonies. In response to this history, the founders of the U.S. decided there would be no national religion. The First Amendment makes this perfectly clear. Conservatives are correct when they argue that the phrase separation of church and state doesn't appear in the Constitution, but as Stephen just read, it appears in a letter Thomas Jefferson wrote to explain the First Amendment. The Supreme Court has cited this letter repeatedly in church and state decisions. In 1831, an Episcopal minister summed up the beliefs of the founding fathers this way: the founders of our nation were nearly all infidels. Among all our presidents from Washington downward, not one was a professor of religion, at least not more than Unitarianism. At that time, the term infidel was applied to deists and Masons. In this light, Wilson's summary of our first 6 presidents is completely accurate. George Washington was Anglican by birth, but never expressed any interest in traditional Christianity. When he escorted his wife to church, he stood in the back and left after the sermon. He never took communion. In fact, during his first term as president, Washington was chastised from the pulpit for this behavior. A Reverend Abernathy of Philadelphia railed against those in elevated stations who uniformly turn their backs on the Lord's Supper. Washington responded by not going to church at all. What Washington was really interested in was Freemasonry. The Freemasons were and are a men's club. They claim their roots went back to the builders of Solomon's temple and the pyramids, and they revered their ancestors' engineering knowledge. In the 1700s, Masons proposed to the power of traditional Christianity, especially the Catholic Church, which returned the favor. Many Masons, including Washington, were also deists. They saw creation of the universe as evidence of a God, but denied God's influence on day-to-day life. With these beliefs, Masons welcomed men of any religion or no religion. This Masonic ideal can be seen in one of the very few statements Washington ever wrote that mention religion. When asked who should be hired to work at Mount Vernon, he answered, "If they are good workmen, they may be from Asia, Africa, or Europe. They may be Mahometans, Jews, Christians of any sect, or they may be atheists." In his extensive writings, Washington never mentions the word Christ, rarely used the word God, instead using Masonic terms such as the great architect. In 1793, when the foundation of the U.S. Capitol was laid, Washington invited members of 3 local Masonic lodges to conduct the ceremony. At one point, wearing full Masonic regalia, Washington laid a silver plaque on the foundation stone, inscribed not in the year of our Lord, but rather in the year of Masonry, 5793. Now there's a story for the Thanksgiving dinner table. Our next 2 presidents, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, were both Unitarian in their beliefs. That is, they rejected the doctrine of the Trinity and the belief that Jesus was God. Adams and Jefferson had a long and complicated relationship. Before the Revolution, they were extremely close and corresponded regularly. After the war, they both worked as ambassadors in Europe, often in France. They were passionately interested in everything and wrote about their Unitarian and anti-Trinitarian discoveries, in addition to writing about politics, government, housekeeping, and travel arrangements. Adams came back more conservative, very impressed with the pomp and grandeur of the French court. When Washington was inaugurated, Adams complained the title president was too mundane. He tried to convince the Senate to use His Highness, the President of the United States. When Jefferson received word of this title, he called it the most superlatively ridiculous thing I ever heard. Jefferson came back somewhat radicalized by the French Revolution, embracing its motto of liberty, fraternity, and equality, and its support of atheism. He continued to support the revolution even as it fell into the reign of terror in the 1790s. By the time Adams became president in 1797, he was the head of the conservative Federalist Party, and Jefferson was the head of the opposing party, the Democratic Republicans, and the 2 men barely spoke to each other. As president, Adams tried to unite the country through censorship. The Alien and Sedition Acts allowed him to jail writers and preachers who opposed him. Jefferson was horrified by these attacks on the freedom of speech. Then, in 1798, Adams called for a national day of fasting and repentance. This violation of the First Amendment set off riots between the two parties in the streets of Philadelphia. The Federalists who supported Adams wore black cockades on their hats, and the Democratic Republicans wore the red, white, and blue cockades of the French Revolution. Adams estimated the crowd at 10,000, probably an exaggeration. But Governor Mifflin of Pennsylvania did have to call out the cavalry to patrol the streets and guard the president's residence. Despite all this tumult, in old age, the friendship of Adams and Jefferson was revived. When Jefferson edited his own version of the Bible, he sent a copy to Adams. The book eliminated everything but those New Testament verses Jefferson believed were authentic, which were, he wrote, as easily distinguished as diamonds in a dughill. Dughill, sorry. This Bible, which he named The Philosophy of Jesus, was 47 pages long. John Adams replied, Sancte Socrate ora pro nobis, which translates as, Holy Socrates, pray for us. James Madison, our fourth president, was like Washington and Benjamin Franklin, a Mason and a deist. He was also a close friend of his neighbor, Jefferson, and together they worked 7 years to pass the statute for establishing religious freedom in Virginia. Madison is often called the father of the Constitution, and he was the author of the First Amendment. In school, I learned that Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. I did not learn that he wrote a notorious deist manifesto called The Age of Reason, in which he pointed out all the ways the Bible is wrong or contradicts itself. Paine wrote the first half while imprisoned in France during the Reign of Terror. James Monroe, our fifth president, was minister to France at that time and arranged for his friend Paine's release. In an article on the religion of James Monroe, David Holmes writes, the Monroes took Paine into their residence to convalesce. They expected he would stay a short time, but he became the man who came to dinner. For 2 years, Paine recuperated with the Monroes as he wrote the second half of his book. In his own large library, Monroe kept no books on religion and wrote nothing about his beliefs. He may have been more of an atheist than a deist. Our sixth president, John Quincy Adams, was a Unitarian like his parents. So Dr. Reverend Wilson was absolutely correct. From Washington down, our first 6 presidents were all infidels, or nothing more than Unitarians. And the separation of church and state was a conscious decision to guarantee freedom of thought and belief. As fascinating as I find the stories of our founders' vision for the U.S., these are all the stories of rich white men whose new nation continued the horrors of slavery. Washington, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe all owned other human beings. They undoubtedly knew this was wrong, but they didn't see a path to change. Jefferson blamed the British for creating the system, but feared that mass emancipation would lead to a bloodbath, which in the end it did, although not in the way he anticipated. Even though women didn't have the right to vote, They were a tremendous force in the fight for abolition. But these are topics for another day. Let us now consider how the separation of church and state is working at this moment. The challenge of the First Amendment is that its first two clauses may, in some cases, seem to contradict each other. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. To some of us, no establishment of religion means public schools cannot allow a coach to lead prayers with his students after a game. To others, telling the coach he can't pray on the field is prohibiting the free exercise of his beliefs. As you probably know, this was a real case that the Supreme Court recently settled in favor of the coach, a decision many of us consider a step backwards. I am old enough that prayer was allowed in public schools when I was in elementary school. Actually, I should say Protestant prayer was required in my public school. Before assemblies, we said the Lord's Prayer together with the Catholic children, like myself, hurriedly making a sign of the cross, and then going silent when we hit "For thine is the kingdom." Catholics don't say that part of the Lord's Prayer. The Jewish children stood silent through the whole thing. Even in first grade, I found this strange and it had nothing to do with public education. The Supreme Court banned the practice in 1962. This latest ruling seems to be moving against precedent. Even more obviously against precedent was the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade, taking away the federal protection of the right to abortion that was settled law for 49 years. They have handed the issue to the states. While this change was not justified with religious arguments, there are no scientific or medical reasons to allow states to ban abortions after 6 weeks, which several states are doing. It is hard not to conclude that the current court has abandoned the First Amendment and has instead acted on their personal religious beliefs. And if that one ruling weren't bad enough, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote in his decision that previous rulings on the right to contraceptives and the right to gay marriage should also be reevaluated. We are being threatened with a turn toward theocracy. Margaret Atwood, the author of The Handmaid's Tale, has said that the book is not science fiction, it's speculative fiction, based on things that have already happened. One inspiration was the 1979 Iranian Revolution, which took away much of Iranian women's freedom. And right now, over 40 years later, teenage girls in Iran are protesting in the streets and sometimes dying for the right to leave their hair uncovered. As Holly Near wrote, "I'm afraid of what you do in the name of your God." Another singer and songwriter, Annie DeFranco, has written a sort of anthem for reproductive rights called "Play God," which you will hear if you stay for the prelude. In the lyrics, she points out that we still live in a patriarchy where men make most of the laws, earn most of the money, and women do most of the work of raising a child. So if deciding whether to end a pregnancy is playing God, the person who gets to decide should be the pregnant one. I would add, consider the difference in our language between mothering a child and fathering a child. And remember, you can't stop women from having abortions. You can only stop them from having safe, legal abortions. Finally, I hope you'll remember the story of Pierre on Election Day. If someone asks you to make a choice, never answer, "I don't care." The moral of Pierre is care. I have too many papers, but I believe we have a closing hymn. Our closing hymn is number 148, "Let Freedom Span Both East and West."
By way of our closing words, please join me in reading our mission statement. By building a loving religious community that nourishes the spirit, celebrates life, and cherishes the connectedness of all things, we will transform ourselves and our world.
Please stay seated if you would like to hear the postlude.
I was done at 16, showing up for class. I was out there in the ring, learning how to kick some ass. I was done at 16, using my mama's keys. It was all on me, yeah, it was all on me. Weren't no free rides, weren't no IOUs. I pulled my weight, yeah, I paid my dues. And I showed up to enlist on the first day of recruits. How about you? How about you? And I'm my brother's keeper every chance I can. And I pay my taxes like any working man. And I feel I've earned my right to choose. You don't get to play God, I do. You don't get to play God, man, I do. You get to run the world in your special way. You get much more than your say. Government, religion, it's all just patriarchy. needs to be truly free. This is the modern world, and this one thing is money. But there are two things that a woman needs: control over her own body. I pay the price on top of everything. Each month a bill, each month a reckoning. And each seed that dies, I cry and I bleed. So you can't tell me no, you can't tell me I am a soldier. It's my blood that flows, and I pay the price so that this tree can grow. You don't know creation like I know, so you can't tell me no, you can't tell me. You get to run the world in your special way. You get much more than your say. Government, religion, it's all just patriarchy. I must insist you leave this one thing to me. Whoa, one thing to me. Whoa, one thing to me. Whoa, leave this one thing. 'Cause I'm my brother's keeper every chance I can, and I pay